someone's coming up, artist or band, they're run across icons. You can tell things are moving for you when you start meeting people that you've heard of all your life and respected and so on. And one evening, I was sitting with the Bangles at dinner, and things were happening, but they weren't that well known yet. Hadn't had any hits yet. And we were at dinner in West Hollywood, and a guy from my office came running in, and he said, "Brian Wilson's looking for you guys." And we didn't know Brian Wilson. We didn't understand what he was talking about, but it was Brian Wilson. So we got up, paid the check, and got out of there. Where Brian Wilson wants you, you get up and go, right? So Brian is playing a place at the time that was called the Palace, and I'm wincing because I think it was called the Palace. It hasn't been called that for some time, and that was eventually a really iconic spot for the Bangles later on down the road. But sure enough, Brian Wilson was playing there that night, solo, and he had, I say solo, it wasn't the Beach Boys, it was Brian Wilson, and he was having trouble with some backup vocalists that somehow were clicking for him in whatever way. So someone had said to him, "You got to get the Bangles," because they did such beautiful harmony. They were really such great singers. And sure enough, we go over there, and they know his stuff. They know his music, and he was really impressed and really happy that he had corrected this situation and found some people who were going to back him up. So that night, Brian Wilson played the Palace, and the Bangles were a backup band. I don't even remember if he introduced them or not. He probably did. But it wasn't like they were the opening act or anything. They weren't on the marquee, and I'm not even sure how much they would have helped on the marquee at that point in their career. But somebody knew them well enough to know that they could do the job. And what was cool about it was then afterwards, you're just hanging around talking to Brian Wilson, and I had not met him before that. And I remember, he started telling stories, but he was still under the care of that psychiatrist that ruled his life for a while. So he was quite stiff, friendly, but not animated. And he isn't that animated anyway, really. And he started telling stories, and we were just sitting around like the preacher had arrived, and we were all sitting and listening to these great stories, and very soft spoken. But that night, Bangles kind of saved Brian Wilson's ass, and he was highly appreciative. And there's a connection to a story about a band I worked with later on called Wall of Voodoo that I'll tell you about, and why this night was important to them some months later, maybe even a couple of years later.